glad that I'm able to be here today. It's so hard to believe, isn't it? I'll just share. As we turned around, I saw a member of our church, Evelyn Craig. She was in her van, and I pulled up beside her to ask her how she was doing, and of course, where she was going. She told me that she had picked up some sandbags and was on her way to her house with them to try and do what she could. But of course, given that she was an elderly lady, I thought that I'd better follow her to make sure everything was okay. Her house was inaccessible at this point due to the water. She lived on First, over by the train tracks, and so she had to pull over there. When we got out, she informed us that her husband, who was 89 years old and had significant mobility issues, was still inside the house. There was an EMS person nearby, so we approached him and told him about the situation. But after hearing us out, he informed us that there was no rescue team that was available at the time, and it could be a while before they could offer any sort of assistance. It was at this point that we knew we had to do something. Mike and I placed our valuables in the truck, and we prepared to cross the now waist-deep water. As we crossed, we became concerned about how we were going to get Edgar, Evelyn's husband, back across the very cold, rushing water. When we made it across the water, after navigating the sidewalk and the road, which were of course well underwater, we knocked on the Craig's front door, but there was no answer. We knew Edgar also had limited hearing, so we opened the door and went inside to find him. When we entered the house, we called out to him, but initially got no response. The sound of the water rushing in through the back door was all we could hear when we entered. We continued to call out to Edgar, and finally he heard and came out of his room. We told him we were there to get him out, and that he should gather his personal belongings, including his medications, and a change of clothes as quickly as he could, so we could leave. While he gathered some of his things, I went to the basement where I discovered the windows had given way to the floodwaters and water was quickly filling everything. I did what I could to save a few items by bringing them upstairs and then prepared for the task of getting Edgar back across the road. It was at this point that Mike and I went to look for a way to safely move him across the water. Mike found an old door floating outside the house, and we decided we would carry Edgar across the water on the door. Once Edgar was out of the house, we informed him of our plan. At this point, of course, the water was still rising, and we knew we had to hurry to get him out of there. We first had to help him sit down on the door, on the icy cold water. It was not an easy task when you're nearly 90 years old, so we literally had to lift him up and place him down on the door. Once he was sitting, we told him to hold on to the green garbage bucket which contained his personal belongings, and told him that we were going to carry him across the water. We lifted the door with Edgar on board and proceeded to cross the road again. This time, the sidewalks posed a much greater challenge as we were now carrying Edgar on the door, and we were concerned that if he fell off the door, he would not survive. At each sidewalk, we had to come to an almost complete stop to slowly move across the cold, muddy floodwaters. Finally, we arrived on the other side, and Evelyn, his wife, came to greet us. She was overjoyed to know that her Edgar was safe, yet very sad that she was not able to get back to her home to save anything.